My name is Dana Foster. I'm 41, and I run a small breakfast diner in Rockford, Michigan. Last month, my 17-year-old daughter spent 9 hours cooking a birthday dinner for 23 relatives for my mother's 70th. At 4:15 that afternoon, my mother sent one text that erased all of it. Change of plans. We're eating at a restaurant. Adults only. I didn't argue. I didn't post a word in the family chat. I made one quiet move instead, and by 8:40 the next morning, my mother was standing on my porch with a paper bag held in both hands, ringing my doorbell, like she wasn't sure the house would let her in. In 70 years, nobody had ever made her wait at a door. Here's what she didn't know about that night and about the 25 years that led to it. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. This channel is where quiet women finally get loud. Stories about family, about betrayal, and about the exact moment enough becomes enough. Every story here belongs to someone who kept the peace until the peace stopped being worth keeping. If that sounds like your kind of story, drop a comment below, tell me where you're listening from, and hit subscribe. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Run a diner for 6 years, and you learn the difference between a customer and a critic. Customers eat. Critics evaluate. Critics don't tip. I bought the Blue Door in 2019 from the man I'd waitressed for since I was 19. And I have flipped eggs at 4:30 in the morning every day since, which means I know something about feeding people who never say thank you. That's fine. The griddle doesn't need applause. Neither do I. But there's a difference between a stranger who forgets to say it and a family that has built an entire operating system out of not saying it. I grew up inside that operating system. In my mother's world, every gathering came with an org chart. There was a right table and a lesser table. There was a list of who hosted, who brought the good casserole, who got invited back to the sunroom afterward, and who found out about the sunroom from photos. My mother, Rose, ran all of it, the way some women run garden clubs, and some run governments with a guest list. For 25 years, I was the staff. I cooked the Easter ham. I hosted the showers. I did Thanksgiving the year her kitchen was being remodeled, and the year it wasn't. Nobody ever asked me to. Asking would have required noticing. My brother Paul showed up with a bottle of wine and got a toast. I showed up with 3 days of cooking and got asked where the serving spoons were. I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me. I'm telling you so you understand the machine my daughter was born into. In my family, I wasn't the favorite and I wasn't the black sheep. I was the caterer. And it took my daughter's 17th year on this earth for me to notice the apron I had never taken off. Let me tell you about Lily. My daughter shows love with her hands. She doesn't gush. She fixes your wobbly chair plugs in your phone before you've asked and stands beside me on the diner's Saturday line like she was born holding tongs. She's worked weekends since she was 15 on the books, taxes, and all, because I don't run my family the way my mother runs hers. When Rose's 70th came up on the calendar, Lily didn't buy a card. She built a menu. For 2 weeks, she texted relatives, one at a time, with a single question. What's the one dish you remember from a family dinner that made you happy? She collected the answers like evidence. Aunt Janet said, chicken and dumplings. The little cousins voted mac and cheese, the baked kind with the crust. Uncle Gene said green beans, and Lily wrote them down as my late father's green beans instead, because it was really him she wanted at the table. She didn't have to ask my mother. Rose has spent 30 years telling anyone within range about her own grandmother's peach cobbler, the one nobody has ever gotten right since. Lily found a version of the recipe, then adjusted it through 4 test batches, until my kitchen smelled like a county fair in August. Batch 2 she fed to the diner regulars for notes. Batch 3 went in the trash. Batch 4 she covered and set in the fridge and said that's the one. She budgeted the entire dinner out of her own savings, $340 of tip money, and babysitting cash. At the grocery store, I tried to slide my card across, and she pushed it back. It's my gift, Mom. Gifts count more when they cost you something. 17 years old. She hand-lettered a place card for every guest, all 23 of them in calligraphy. She'd taught herself off a video. The biggest one said, Grandma Rose, with a gold border, she ruled twice to get straight. I watched her tape the menu to the fridge and thought, this is the good part of us distilled. I had no idea I was watching a test my mother was about to fail. I want to be clear about something, because I've replayed this part 100 times. I did not walk my daughter into an ambush blind. I know my mother. 3 weeks out, I pinned it down in writing. I texted Rose's birthday dinner at our house Saturday the 14th, 6 o'clock. Lily's cooking the whole thing for you. Confirming. My mother texted back one word. Fine. Not lovely. Not thank you. Fine. I have hosted enough of her events to know that fine is a yellow light. So a week before at Sunday lunch, I asked again out loud with witnesses in the room. Mom, Saturday, our house Lily's dinner. You're sure? She waved her hand like she was shooing the question off a tablecloth. Yes, of course. Your house. Then she turned to Sandra, her friend from the club, who had stopped by to drop off bridge cards, and added the sentence I should have taken more seriously. Dana's place is cozy, homey, simple, you know. Sandra smiled with the bottom half of her face only. In my mother's dictionary, cozy is not a compliment. Cozy is a floor she believes she's standing above. I heard it, I logged it, then I did what I had always done with my mother's little knives. I translated it into something a daughter could live with. She's old-fashioned. She'll melt when she tastes the cobbler. 25 years of fluency turns out to be its own kind of blindness. What I heard as a snobbish aside was a door quietly opening. Through it 3 weeks later, at 4:15 on a Saturday afternoon, walked Sandra's gift. Here's the part I only learned afterward. Sandra's son manages the front of house at Antonelli's. The private room had a cancellation that week, a rehearsal dinner that fell apart, and Sandra got it comped on 8 hours' notice. That's the whole mechanism. No conspiracy. Just a woman with a phone number, in an opening, and my mother, who has never in her life been offered an upgrade she could refuse. The day of the party, Lily was up before I was, and I get up at 4:30 for a living. By 7, she had the kitchen organized like a line stations marked in painter's tape, borrowed sheet pans from the diner, stacked by size, a handwritten timeline taped to the cabinet with every dish scheduled backward from 6. Chicken and dumplings for Janet. The baked mac and cheese with the crust doubled because the little cousins were coming. My father's green beans, a roast. Rolls from scratch, which I told her was madness and which she made anyway, and the cobbler timed to come out warm at 6:15, so the whole house would smell like Rose's childhood when the candles went in. My husband Mark ran errands like a man possessed. Ice, folding chairs, butter, different butter. I mostly stayed out of the way, which for a diner cook, watching someone else run her kitchen, is a form of love. I hope my daughter understands someday. Around 3, she washed her hands, untied her apron, and sat at the dining table to finish the place cards. 23 of them fanned out in rows her lettering, getting more confident as she went. She set Grandma Rose at the head, checked the gold border against the edge of a credit card, and straightened it twice. At 4, she stood in the doorway and looked at 9 hours of work. 6 dishes, a set table, a house that smelled like 3 generations. And she let herself smile quick, like she caught herself doing it. At 4:15, my phone lit up on the counter. I remember the exact time because the oven timer read 1:45 on the cobbler, and I remember thinking, before I even picked it up, it's her birthday, surely not even my mother. The text went to the whole family group chat, all 23 guests, 45 seconds before the one she sent me privately. I checked the timestamps later, and that detail still tells me everything about the order of operations in my mother's heart. The group message read, "Change of plans, everyone. Sandra has booked the private room at Antonelli's as my birthday gift. We're eating at a restaurant tonight, 7 o'clock. Adults only, please. It's a lovely room. See you there." And then to me, separately, "You can bring the cobbler if you want. Adults only." I stood in my kitchen and read it 3 times, the way you reread a lab result that can't be right. Antonelli's, 7, adults only with an exclamation point on it like lipstick. It's a lovely room. My daughter was upstairs changing into the dress she'd bought for tonight. On my stove sat 6 finished dishes for 23 people. In my dining room sat 23 hand-lettered cards, and the one at the head of the table had a gold border she'd ruled twice. I called my mother. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. She was at the salon. I knew because she'd posted a photo from the chair. Fresh silver curls, captioned 70 and fabulous. I called again. Nothing. I texted Mom, "Lily cooked all day. Everything is ready. Please call me." The reply came 9 minutes later, and it was not a call. "Don't make this difficult, Dana. Sandra went to a great deal of trouble. A restaurant is simply more appropriate for the occasion. Adults only." There it was twice in one afternoon. Not an accident, not a slip, a policy. I turned my phone face down and walked toward the kitchen doorway to work out what I was going to say. And I didn't have to say anything because Lily was already at the counter, in her new dress, with her own phone in her hand. She was in the family chat. Of course she was. She was one of the 23. She had watched the plan for her dinner get canceled in real time, in front of everyone by the woman it was for. I watched her read it again. Then she set the phone down, picked up the sugar shaker, and went back to finishing the top of the cobbler. Without looking up in a voice so level, it broke my heart cleaner than any crying could have, she said. "It's okay, Mom. I'm used to it. I'm used to it." 17 years old, 9 hours into a gift, and her first reflex was to comfort me and to file the whole thing under normal. I stood in that doorway doing math I had never let myself do. The dance recital when she was 8 missed for bridge night. The 10th birthday moved to a Sunday because Rose had brunch. The swim meet nobody came to. Every single time I had knelt to my daughter's eye level and translated, "Grandma loves you in her own way. She's from a different generation. Be patient with her." I thought I'd been building a bridge between them. Standing in that doorway, smelling 9 hours of her patience coming out of my oven, I finally saw what I had actually built. My daughter knew the family rulebook by heart, and I was the one who had taught it to her, one gentle translation at a time. Let me show you the world I grew up inside. In my mother's house, there were 2 tables at every holiday. The dining room table, mahogany candles, cloth napkins, and the card table in the den vinyl top folding legs, one of them short enough that somebody's milk was always tilting. I ate at the card table until I was 23. 23! Then I was promoted her word the year I got engaged to Mark because a fiancé made me, and I quote, "a full household." My cousin Rachel never got promoted at all. She stopped coming instead, and my mother told people Rachel had gotten strange. Invitations in my mother's world were report cards. Who hosted Easter was a league table. When my father was alive, He'd wink at me across the 2 rooms and smuggle me the good rolls. After he died 6 years ago, the winking stopped and the org chart tightened because grief for my mother is best managed through seating. Here's the thing I want to be fair about. She's not a cartoon. She remembers every grandchild's shoe size. She shows up at hospitals before visiting hours. When the diner flooded in 2022, she was there at 6 the next morning in rubber boots with a wet vac in the trunk, and she worked the shop line beside me for 2 days and never mentioned it afterward, not once, not even when it would have won her an argument. My mother knows how to love with her hands. She just cannot let love outrank protocol. I had spent my whole life translating her, softening her rules into quirks, her cruelty into generation. Standing in my kitchen that afternoon with her policy glowing on my phone, a new question walked in and sat down, one I had never thought to ask in 41 years. I knew every rule in my mother's dictionary, but who wrote it? Meanwhile, the family chat did what my family always does when Rose issues a decree. It went diplomatically cowardly quiet. 2 thumbs-up emojis. One sounds fancy from a cousin's husband who has never held an opinion in his life. Then, in the private channels, the real conversation started because adults only had math in it. My cousin Beth has 3 kids under 10. My cousin Tyler has a 6-year-old and a baby. Between them, adults only had just uninvited 9 people from a 23-person party on 4 hours' notice on a Saturday in a town where you cannot conjure a sitter by 6 any more than you can conjure snow in July. Beth texted me directly. So, what are we supposed to do? Leave them in the car. Tyler's wife sent a voice memo that started calm and ended with the phrase, Her Royal Highness. I won't repeat the middle. Reading those messages at my kitchen counter, I understood that my mother's new plan hadn't only erased Lily's dinner. It had sorted the entire family into who mattered tonight and who didn't. The club-worthy and the car seat crowd. The same sorting she'd been doing my whole life at every mahogany table with a card table annex in the den. The only difference was that this time she had done it in writing with a timestamp to all 23 of us at once. My phone sat on the counter filling up with other people's hurt. 6 dishes steamed on my stove. Upstairs, I could hear my daughter taking off the dress she'd bought for a party that no longer wanted her, and something in me that had been on its knees, being reasonable for 25 years, very quietly stood up. Before I tell you about the phone call with my brother, let me stop for a second. If you have ever watched your child's effort get erased by one sentence from an adult who should have known better, a canceled visit, a forgotten recital, a "we'll see that" meant, no, tell me in the comments what that sentence was. I read every single one, and I promise you, it matters more than the person who said it ever knew. Okay, my brother Paul. I called him because some ancient reflex in me still believed that if the 2 of us ever pushed on the same wall at the same time, it might move. Paul is 45, sells commercial insurance, and has survived our mother the way smart men survive weather by carrying an umbrella and never commenting on the storm. He picked up on the second ring, and before I could finish laying it out, he sighed. The family sigh. Dana, it's her birthday, her 70th. Whatever this is about the venue, don't make it a thing. I told him it was already a thing. His niece had made 23 place cards for a thing. Kids don't care about that stuff as much as you think, he said. And behind him, I could hear a golf broadcast, the hushed announcer voice men use for putts. Look, it's adults only. It's one dinner. Lily's a big girl. Come, don't come. But if this blows up, it isn't going to be Mom who blew it up. You know how this works. I did know how it works. That was the whole problem. I was a certified expert in how it works. I thanked my brother, wished him a good back 9, and hung up and crossed the second to last name off the list of people I'd hoped might stand next to me. The last name on that list was my husband. Mark is a good man, and good men in families like mine come pre-installed with the peacekeeping software. He came home from the ice run into a war zone that smelled like cobbler, listened to the whole thing with his jaw working, and then said the reasonable words I knew. Oh, he'd say, because I had said them myself for 25 years. One dinner, Dana. We grit our teeth, we go, we come home. It's her 70th. Do you want to be the story at her 70th? He wasn't wrong by the old rules. He was quoting them accurately. I didn't argue because there was nothing to argue. The old rules are internally consistent. That's what makes them a prison. Then my husband walked through the kitchen to get a glass of water, and he stopped. Lily was at the counter in sweatpants, the dress upstairs on the bed. She wasn't crying, which would have been easier. She was wrapping, methodically, neatly, with the diner technique I taught her. 6 dishes, one at a time, into containers labeled in painter's tape and Sharpie in her careful hand. Chicken and dumplings for Janet. Mac and cheese freeze half. 9 hours of a gift being folded up and put away like out-of-season clothes. Mark stood there with his water and watched his daughter file her own party into the refrigerator, and I watched 15 years of keep the peace drain out of my husband through the floor. He set the glass down. He looked at me, not at his phone, not at the door at me, and he asked the only question left in the house. What are you going to do? The honest answer at 4:30 that afternoon was that I didn't know yet. What I knew was that my mother had one phone call coming, one last exit, offered in good faith, and she was about to spend it. She answered on the first ring this time. Hair done, timeline clear, victory in hand. Dana, please tell me you're not calling to be dramatic. I was, for the record, standing very still in my pantry with the door shut, which is the least dramatic room in America. I made her an offer with no teeth in it at all, the kind you make when you're still hoping the person you love is in there somewhere. Mom Lily cooked your favorites. 6 dishes from scratch with her own money. Here's what I'm asking. Either we bring the food to Antonelli's and make it part of the night family style, the room's already private, or we move the restaurant to Sunday lunch and do tonight at our house as planned. Either way, Sandra's gift still counts. Either way, your granddaughter gets to give you hers. Pick one and I'll make it happen. Silence. The expensive kind. Then my mother's voice, cool as the good china. Antonelli's is not a potluck, Dana. I'm not turning a private room into a church basement. And I'm certainly not rearranging my birthday around a teenager's project. A project. 9 hours. $340. 4 test batches of her own grandmother's cobbler. A project. She can cook for the family some other time. My mother went on gathering warmth the way Frost does. Honestly, this is what I mean about you. Everything becomes a negotiation. Sandra went to enormous trouble. The room seats 12, it's elegant, it's adults only, and it starts at 7. Wear the blue dress, it's slimming. And she hung up. I stood in my pantry among the canned tomatoes and the backup napkins with the phone still warm against my ear, and I noted with a strange professional calm the exact shape of the door that had just closed. The room seats 12. 23 people had been invited. She had already decided which 11 of us were furniture. I came out of the pantry and stood at my dining room table, and that's where this story turns. So let me put you exactly where I was standing. The table was already set. We'd done it at noon, Lily and I. Leaves added cloth-pressed borrowed chairs squared up like a wedding. Marching down the middle in 2 neat rows sat 23 hand-lettered cards. Aunt Janet, Uncle Gene, Beth, Tyler, every one of the kids in the little ones had doodles, a soccer ball for Beth's oldest, a dinosaur for the baby, because Lily said babies deserve dinosaurs, place cards for a family, not a court, no calligraphy for the important people, and ballpoint for the rest. Same ink, same care, every seat worth the same trouble. Except one card was bigger, and it sat at the head. Grandma Rose, gold border, hand-ruled, done twice. I picked it up. I don't know what I was looking for. Weight, maybe. When I turned it over, there was pencil on the back, faint in my daughter's real handwriting, the fast one, not the calligraphy. Happy, 71st from your sous chef. Her sous chef. That's what Lily called herself the summer she was 12, elbow deep in diner prep, when she announced that one day she'd cook a whole dinner for the family and Grandma would sit right there at the end of it. 5 years she had been carrying that little plan around. I stood at my perfectly set table, holding a gold-bordered card addressed to a woman who had just called it a project, and I stopped being a translator. I put the card back in its place at the head of the table, and I left the table exactly as it was. 23 cards, 23 chairs. Some part of me had already decided something the rest of me was still catching up to. At 4:40, my phone buzzed again. My mother, having sensed the way she always senses that her middle child had not yet fallen in line, had escalated from policy to terms. Since you haven't confirmed, I expect you and Mark at Antonelli's at 7. Alone. This is not a debate. If you choose to sulk at home, instead, don't bother with Thanksgiving, and don't expect me to explain to the family why my own daughter boycotted my 70th. They'll draw their own conclusions. I read it twice. There is a special genre of message that only controlling people can write, the kind where every sentence is a hostage. Come alone, your daughter is the ransom. Don't bother with Thanksgiving. The holidays are the ransom. They'll draw their own conclusions. Your reputation is the ransom. For 25 years, I had paid every one of these promptly and in full and called it being the bigger person. I want to be honest about what I felt standing there because it wasn't rage. Not yet. It was inventory. I looked at the stove. 6 dishes. I looked at the table. 23 cards. I looked at the clock. 4:43. And I looked last at the ceiling toward my daughter's room where a girl who had said I'm used to it was lying on her bed teaching herself to mean it. Here's what the inventory came to. If I drove to that restaurant tonight, even silently, even only to keep the peace, the lesson would be carved into Lily permanently deeper than any calligraphy. Effort is a project. Love is a seating chart. And Mom will always, always translate. There was no middle seat left at this table. My mother had removed it herself at 4:40 in writing. All that was left was choosing which woman I was going to be at 6. I sat on the edge of my bed for 10 minutes and did the thing I had been avoiding for 25 years. I audited myself, not my mother, me. The recital, when Lily was 8, missed for bridge night. I'm the one who knelt down and said Grandma loves you in her own way. The 10th birthday moved for Rose's brunch schedule. I'm the one who called it flexible. The swim meet, nobody came to where she took second and scanned the bleachers twice before she got out of the pool. I'm the one who texted the photos to the family with 3 exclamation points, so nobody would have to feel bad about not being in them. Every one of those translations had felt like protection at the time. Sitting on my bed with the clock running, I finally heard them, the way Lily must have filed them a fluent adult, explaining patiently, over and over, why her hurt shouldn't be believed. My mother built the ranking system. Fine. But I was the one who taught my daughter to accept her rank politely. Every translation was a small tuition payment to a school I should have pulled us both out of years ago. That's the sentence that stood me up off the bed. Because here is what I understood with the kind of clarity that feels less like a light bulb and more like a fever breaking. I could not get Lily a better seat at my mother's table. Nobody could. That table was built plank by plank, precisely so that somebody would always be below the salt. It needed a card table in the den, the way an engine needs an exhaust pipe. The only move that had ever existed, the one hiding in plain sight behind 25 years of my diplomacy, was not to argue for a chair. It was to set a different table entirely. I went downstairs, picked up my phone, and then put it back down, because there was somebody I had to talk to first. Lily was on her bed, still in sweatpants, watching a cooking video with the sound off, which is what she does instead of crying. I sat down next to her, and I didn't soften anything because I was done softening things. "Here's what I'm thinking," I said. "I open our doors tonight at 6, exactly as planned, and I invite the whole family. Everyone. Kids first. Grandma will take it as war. Some people will go to the restaurant anyway. It might be 4 of us eating 6 dishes, and Monday the phone calls will be ugly. And if we do this, you're not a kid whose party got rescued. You're the chef. It's your food on the line. So it's your call, too." She was quiet, and I watched her weigh it. Really weigh it, the aunts, the empty chairs, the cousins, who'd have to choose because my daughter is not naive. She is 17 and fluent in this family. Then she paused the video and looked at me, and for the first time since 4:15, the flatness was gone from her face. Something underneath it had woken back up. "If it's 4 people," she said, "I'm still plating it in courses." Then a beat later, quieter, "You'd really do that to Grandma?" And I said the truest sentence. I said all day, "Not to Grandma, baby. For you. There's a difference. And tonight seems like a good night to finally learn it." She nodded once, chef to chef. Then she swung her legs off the bed because we had a service to run in 90 minutes and one of us had to check the rolls. I sat at the kitchen counter and wrote the message to the family chat, and I want to show you the 3 drafts I deleted because they matter. Draft 1 was a prosecution. A list, dates included, of every event my mother had rescheduled, every kid she'd exiled to the den, 25 years of receipts, ending with tonight. Accurate, satisfying. Deleted because it was a trial, and trials are just seating charts with verdicts. Draft 2 was sarcastic. Since the private room only seats 12, deleted because sarcasm is my mother's native tongue, and I was done being fluent in her. Draft 3 was an essay. Paragraphs, apologies in advance, context, softening. The translator's version, me kneeling one last time between my family and the truth, explaining everybody to everybody. I read it twice and deleted it slowest of all because that draft was the woman I had been for 25 years, and she died hard. Here's what I finally understood, with the cursor blinking in an empty box. Anything I wrote in her language, blame status spin, kept me at her table, just seated angrier. The only message that actually left the table was the one with no argument in it at all. An invitation doesn't argue. An invitation opens a door and stands there with the porch light on. So I wrote something short and warm, and I attached 2 photographs. And before I could reread it into oblivion, I did one last thing first, because my mother, whatever else she is my mother, and she deserved to hear the door open before the rest of the family did. At 5 o'clock exactly, I texted my mother privately one last time. "Mom, I love you, and happy birthday. I'm not coming to the restaurant without Lily. I won't leave her home like a coat. Dinner is still at our house at 6. Everything she cooked for you is on the table, and the seat at the head has your name on it in gold. It will be there at 6, and it will still be yours if you walk in at 8. I hope you come. Either way, I'm done choosing between my mother and my daughter." I choose the table where you both fit. I read it once and sent it before the translator, and me could soften, I'm done into, I'd rather not. Then I watched the screen. The 3 dots appeared. Stopped, appeared again longer this time. My mother composing editing, recalibrating a woman who has never in her life sent a first draft. Then the dots vanished, and in their place, a single gray word surfaced under my message and sat there. Seen. 5:03 p.m. Read and dismissed the way you dismiss a waiter. I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. That little gray word, after 41 years hurt, still finds the gap in the armor. But it also did me one last favor. It burned the final bridge I might have been tempted to stand on, wringing my hands. She had seen the open door. She was choosing the room that seats 12. Okay, Mom. Duly noted in writing with a timestamp. Now it was the family's turn. At 5:07, I sent it to the chat, all 23 of us underneath my mother's restaurant announcement, like a small stone set gently on a big desk. 2 photographs, the dining table fully set 23 place cards catching the evening light, and a close-up of the cobbler golden imperfect, obviously homemade, and a caption. No explanation, no accusation, nothing for anyone to argue with. Dinner is still at 6 at our house, exactly as planned. Everything on the table was cooked for Grandma by Lily from all your favorite recipes. Everyone is welcome at my table, kids especially. Then I put the phone face down on the counter. I'll tell you the same thing I told Mark when he raised his eyebrows at me. I wasn't recruiting. I refused to count who was coming, refused to check the chat, refused to turn my daughter's dinner into a poll. The message wasn't a move against the restaurant. The restaurant could have its evening. It was a fact stated once. This door is open. This food exists. This child cooked it. Everyone fits. What people did with that fact would finally tell me who my family actually was underneath 25 years of seating charts, and I did not know the answer. Mark flipped his phone over too in solidarity, and the 2 of us stood in our kitchen like people waiting out a coin toss. Lily didn't wait with us. Lily was tasting the gravy. At 5:58, the doorbell rang. It was Beth. Beth, her husband, and all 3 kids, the youngest, already reaching for me off her hip. Behind them on the walk, like a second wave, came Tyler's crew, the 6-year-old running ahead, his wife carrying the baby seat like a lantern. We were always coming here, Beth said, handing me a bag of dinner rolls nobody needed. The other invitation didn't include my children. So, as far as I'm concerned, it didn't include me. Aunt Janet arrived at 6 sharp, with her coat already off a woman perpetually ready to do dishes. Then Uncle Gene, who hugged Lily too long and didn't explain why. Then Mrs. Henderson from my dad's side, with a bottle of sparkling cider for the chef. 14 people counting us. I did not count the 9 who weren't there. I'll be honest, I noticed. You always notice. The gold-bordered card at the head of the table sat in front of an empty chair all night, and I never once moved it. But 14 people filled my house to the walls anyway, because children count double when a house is being measured for warmth. And my daughter tied her apron back on, stood at the pass between my kitchen and my dining room, and ran her first real service. Courses announced, timing called. Chicken and dumplings set down in front of Aunt Janet, who looked at the bowl and had to fan her own face with her hand. The mac and cheese with the crust, mobbed by cousins before it hit the trivet. My father's green beans and Janet saying quietly to nobody, "Oh, Frank, nobody at that table was furniture. I'll tell you about the other party, the way I learned it secondhand from Janet, who heard it from her friend Dolores, who was at Antonelli's that night for an anniversary and had a clear view of the private room, because in a town like ours, there is always a Dolores, 9 people in a room set for 12. My mother at the head in her salon, curls Sandra to her right, presiding over her gift. Paul and his wife, 3 club couples minus 1 husband with a cold. That was the party. 9 adults, nobody under 50, in a lovely room with a long wine list, and per Dolores, the acoustics of a bank lobby. The food was reportedly excellent. The toasts were reportedly brief. My mother reportedly checked her phone twice during the entree, which for a woman with her posture regarding phones at tables is practically a flare fired over the bow. And at 8:53, and I know this, because I was there for this part, the family chat silent since my 5:07 message quietly came back to life. Beth posted a photo of the cobbler half demolished. Then one of the kids' table, the real kind, the joyful kind, juice boxes raised mid-toast. Then Janet posted the place cards. No captions, no commentary, not one word aimed at anyone. Just a door standing open in photographs where 23 people could see it. The reply from the restaurant contingent was silence of a very different texture than before. The last guests left at 10. Lily fell asleep sitting up on the couch at 10:40, apron still half-tied, and Mark carried her up the stairs the way he used to when she was 7, her feet hanging comically far past his elbow now. I stood alone in my kitchen, washing the last sheet pan, and that's when it hit me. Not triumph, nothing so shiny. What hit me elbow deep in dishwater at 11 at night was her voice at 4:15. "It's okay, Mom. I'm used to it." I cried then, quietly into the steam. For a girl who had taught herself to expect the card table, and for the 25 years of me who had handed her the flashcards, because I want to be honest about what that night actually cost underneath the cobbler and the juice box toasts. My mother had not called, not during dinner, not after the photos. Somewhere across town, she was taking off her earrings in a quiet house, turning 70, furious at me. And some 7-year-old part of me still wanted to drive over and fix it, translate it, cater it back together. That part doesn't die in one night. I don't think it dies at all. But standing at that sink, I finally knew the difference between fear and grief. I could survive my mother's anger. What I could not survive was my daughter at 40 saying I'm used to it to a child of her own. Janet had stayed to help dry because Janet always stays. While I was still at the sink, she picked up a towel and without preamble, handed me the missing chapter of my own mother. "You know she wasn't born like this," Janet said. 1980. Rose was 24 first Thanksgiving as a Whitfield bride. Her mother-in-law sat her in the kitchen. Not near the kitchen, honey. In it. Told her the dining table was for family. And she wasn't family, yet she was married to family. Your mother ate her Thanksgiving standing up at the counter alone, listening to them laugh through the wall. And it wasn't one holiday, Janet said. She ate in that kitchen every holiday until Paul was born. She used to say Paul earned her a seat, a baby earning his mother a chair. Janet folded the towel into a neat, furious square. The Whitfields ranked her. So the day she got a table of her own, she started ranking. Your mother didn't invent that rule book, Dana. She inherited it. Doesn't excuse a thing. But that's where the ink came from. I stood with my hands in the cooling water and let it land. My mother, at 24, eating alone at a counter, learning the exact lesson she would spend 50 years administering. It explained everything. It changed nothing. Or as I said to Janet, drying my hands, understanding the ink doesn't unwrite the sentence. It only tells me how far back the sentence goes. Before the doorbell rings, and it is going to ring at 8:40 on a Sunday morning, and you already know who's standing on the other side of it, I want to ask you something honestly. If it were your mother on that porch after the night I just described, would you open the door? And if you would, on whose terms, yours or hers, be honest with me in the comments. I wasn't sure of my own answer until my hand was on the knob. Sunday morning, 8:40. Mark had taken Lily to the diner to return the sheet pans, and she'd stayed behind in the back with a book once they got home. I was alone with my coffee, in the wreckage of a good party, when the doorbell rang. Through the frosted glass, I saw a shape I'd know anywhere. The posture first, because my mother's spine arrives everywhere, 10 seconds before she does. But something about the outline was wrong, and it took me a moment to name it. Stillness. My mother does not stand at doors. My mother sweeps through them mid-sentence, because every door in this family had always been functionally hers. This shape rang once and waited. In her hands, held with both of them, the way you hold something in a waiting room, was a brown paper bag. I set my coffee down, and I did not hurry. Not out of cruelty. I want to be precise because the difference matters. I wasn't making her wait to punish her. I was making myself slow down because the woman who usually answered that door in this family was the translator, the fixer, the caterer, sprinting to smooth a moment before it could mean anything. That woman had had a long night and a longer 25 years, and I'd given her the morning off. The kettle had just boiled. I poured it over the leaves, set 2 cups on the tray. Out of 41 years of habit, looked at the second cup for a second, and left it on the tray anyway. Then I opened the door. My mother came in, the way a diplomat enters a country that has just voted wrong. Chin-level eyes taking inventory. She clocked the dining room immediately. Table still extended, cloth still on, and down the center, 23 place cards. Her card, the gold-bordered one still at the head, in front of the chair nobody had sat in. I watched her see it. Something crossed her face and was gone like a fish under ice. She sat at my kitchen table, accepted the tea, arranged the paper bag by her feet, and opened with the sentence she had clearly drafted in the car. The family is saying, you split the family, Dana. Janet's photographs made everything worse. Sandra's friends saw them. Everyone is talking. So here's what we'll do. You'll post something in the chat today, like gracious. You're good at that saying. It was all a mix-up. 2 celebrations, 1 big happy weekend. And then we will simply never speak of this again. I stirred my tea and let the sentence finish landing, and I marveled at it truly the way you'd marvel at a cathedral. My mother had lost the actual night, the food, the family, the photographs, and she had arrived at my door before 9 the next morning to negotiate for the only territory she had ever really governed, which was the story. Not, I'm sorry, not what did I miss. Spin. Mom, I said, and I kept my voice in the register I use for burnt orders at the diner, calm and unbudging. I'm not posting anything. I didn't split the family. I set a table, and everyone was invited to it, you most of all. Your name is still on it in gold. You can go look. People sat where they wanted to sit. That's not a mix-up. That's just what happened, and everybody in that chat watched it happen. My mother set her cup down with the tiny click that has ended arguments in our family for 50 years. For the first time in my life, the click didn't work. What followed was my mother running her entire arsenal in order and me discovering cup by cup of cooling tea that none of it works on a woman who no longer needs a seat. First came the birthday. It was my 70th, Dana. You had one job to be there. I agreed that the number was important and observed that Lily had thought so too, 9 hours worth. Then came the bargain offered as a kindness. Fine. At Christmas, Lily can sit at the main table. There. Is that what this was about? Are we finished? Notice what that offer actually was. My mother even now could only imagine the problem as a seating error solvable by promotion. 1 chair granted from the throne for services rendered. 10 years ago, I'd have taken that deal and called it a breakthrough. I'd have driven home glowing. Another successful translation. I said no, not angrily. I declined it the way you decline a coupon for a store you've stopped shopping at. And my mother stared at me across her tea like a chess player, watching her opponent stand up mid-game and walk cheerfully out of the tournament. That's when it cracked. Not the temper, the posture. Her shoulders came down half an inch. Her voice lost the salon finish. And my mother, 70 years and 1 day old, asked me the first genuine question she had asked me in 25 years. Then what do you want from me, Dana? What am I supposed to do? The kitchen went very quiet. I set down my cup and gave her the whole price, the entire toll, the one condition on which the rest of her years with this branch of her family now stood. Nothing with me, Mom. We're square. I got everything I needed at 6 o'clock last night. It's Lily you owe. She's in the backyard right now, reading on the steps. So you're going to walk out there, and you're going to tell your granddaughter, not me, what her cooking meant. You'll know it went well if she shows you the menu she made you. That's it. That's the whole price of this table. My mother looked at the back door, the way soldiers look at open ground. Then she picked up her paper bag and stood. I stayed at the kitchen window because some conversations you're not meant to hear only guard. My mother crossed my back porch like it was a stage with no marks on it. A woman who has commanded every room of her life, visibly lost in a backyard. Lily looked up from her book. She didn't stand. She didn't rescue her either. My daughter is done rescuing adults, and I have never been prouder of a lesson I never meant to teach. Then my mother, in pressed slacks and day-old salon curls, lowered herself onto the concrete step beside my daughter, not the chair 2 feet away, the step, and opened the paper bag. Out of it came a container I recognized because it had left my house the night before in Aunt Janet's tote. A single serving of peach cobbler, the lid fogged from the fridge. Janet, it turned out, had dropped it on Rose's porch on her way home with a note that said, "Only. You should at least taste it." The fork my mother pulled out of that bag was from her own good silver. She had come armed for a ceremony. I watched through the glass as she said something. Watched Lily answer one syllable. Watched my mother eat cold cobbler on a concrete step, the dessert her granddaughter had rebuilt from 4 test batches of a dead woman's memory. She ate the whole thing slowly. And whatever she said when she finished, I have never asked, and Lily has never fully told me. That conversation belongs to the two of them. What I saw was my daughter's shoulders come down from around her ears for the first time in 2 days. Then I saw her go inside, come back out with a piece of cardstock and hand it over. The menu, hand-lettered, Rose's 71st birthday dinner across the top. I watched my mother read every line of it with her finger the way she reads hymnals. They sat on that step for 10 more minutes, an empress and a line cook, and nothing dramatic happened at all. No tears you could see from a window, no hug for the highlight reel, just 2 people at the same height, eating out of the same pan of history. One of them saying thank you, about 50 years late, and the other one 17 and merciful and letting it count. Here's what that morning bought and what it didn't, because I promised you honest, and I'm keeping the receipt. On her way out, my mother stopped next to me at the front door, straightened a picture frame that was already straight, and said, not quite looking at me, the seasoning. In the chicken and dumplings. A pause. Geological. She gets that from my grandmother. Nobody else ever got it right. Then she left spine first into the Sunday morning. That was it. That was the entire concession speech. 1 inch of ground delivered sideways about seasoning. But I have been fluent in my mother for 41 years, and I can give you the translation. That inch was the whole war. The rest of the fallout came in over the following week on the usual family frequencies. Paul texted me privately, "You actually did it." A text that manages to be 50% accusation and 50% awe, which for Paul is a standing ovation. 2 of the club circuit relatives went cool on me for a season, and I let them. Frost thaws, or it doesn't, and my house is warm either way. Sandra sent my mother a fruit basket, and I'm told referred to the whole affair at Bridge as that unfortunate scheduling matter, which is how empires file their defeats. In the family chat, the same chat, where a 17-year-old had watched her gift get canceled with an exclamation point, quietly became the place where Beth asked the following Thursday, completely deadpan, "So when's the next dinner at Dana's?" Asking for 11 people. I didn't gloat there or anywhere else. I'm telling this story a month later, and I still haven't posted a word about any of it because the win was never the story. My mother taught me everything I know about narrating a family, and the entire point of that Saturday was to stop. The empire didn't fall. Empires rarely do. But that morning, it knocked and waited and said thank you to a 17-year-old on a concrete step. I'll take that over a crown any day of the week. It's been 6 weeks, and I want to tell you what's become normal, because normal is where revolutions either take root or die. On the first Sunday of this month, my dining table was extended again. Cloth on and down the middle stood a new set of hand-lettered cards. Because Lily's table is a thing now. First Sunday of every month, our house. Lily plans the menu. The cousins' kids get cards with doodles. Aunt Janet arrives with her coat somehow already off. And there is no head of the table because Lily seats people wherever the conversation needs them, which is a philosophy of hospitality she invented herself, and which I intend to steal for the diner. Beth's crew hasn't missed one. Tyler's baby has eaten strained peaches off the good spoons, and my mother came to the first one. She sat in the middle of the table at a card that said, in gold-bordered calligraphy, simply, Grandma. Not Rose Whitfield, not the head seat. Grandma. Same ink as everybody else. I watched her read that card and pocket it. Actually pocket it when she thought no one was looking. She missed the second Sunday for a club thing. And here's the miracle nobody warned me about. It was fine. The door stayed open. Nobody grieved. The dumplings got eaten. She is who she is. The difference is that her rank doesn't set the weather in my house anymore. She can come sit in the warmth as an equal, or she can miss it. And either way, the cobbler comes out at 6:15. As for Lily, she's applying to culinary school for fall. Her application essay opens with a birthday dinner for 14. She let me read it once at the kitchen counter, and I had to hold the pages away from my face like a woman checking her mascara at a funeral. Midway through that first Lily's table, while the cousins fought over the crust corners, my daughter leaned into my shoulder at the pass and said quietly, "I'm not used to this yet." I looked out at the loud, unranked, gravy-stained table she'd built, and I gave her the only inheritance I have left that's worth anything. "Good," I said. "Don't ever be." I spent 25 years asking for a better seat at my mother's table, and it turns out the only thing I ever had to do was set my own. Because the people who love you don't need a ranking to find their chairs. That's my story. 9 hours of cooking, one text at 4:15:23, place cards, and 14 chairs that filled themselves. If somebody in your family hands out seats like prizes, maybe this is your sign to set your own table and see who shows up hungry. Tell me in the comments who you'd save a chair for. I read every single one. And hit subscribe if this story fed something in you.